Okay, chapter 13 is over social psychology. Social psychology is a class I have taught for 3 years now. It's something I know a lot about, so I'll try not to get too into depth since this is general psychology. I really enjoy this field of psychology. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's very easy to see play out in your real life. So it's very personal to each person, and I think it's easy to understand because you see it play out in your individual relationships or group relationships, just the people that you come into contact with. So let's get into chapter 13, social psychology. So first off, what is social psychology? Social psychology is a field of psychology involving the scientific attempt to explain how the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of individuals are influenced by the actual, imagined, or implied presence of other human beings. So this is not cognitive psychology. This is not personality. This deals with person-to-person relationships. This has to be in the presence of another person. So why do people do the things they do when they're around other people? Why do they say what they say? Do they do things against what they believe? How do we perceive other people? That's what a lot of this chapter is going to go over. So that is what social psychology is all about. So the first kind of subsection of social psychology is called social cognition. Social cognition is an area within social psychology that focuses on the role of cognitive processes in terms of how people think about others. So how do I think about the things that you do? Am I judgmental of other people? Do I think highly of certain people? Do I think lowly of other people? What are those processes that make me think a certain way about people? So first we've got person perception. This is the mental processes used to perceive the personality characteristics of others. So this is, what are the methods that our brain uses to perceive personality characteristics of other people. Then we have embodied cognition, a field study that examines how bodily sensations influence person perception. So you might say, whenever you think of someone that is maybe a little bit more hard, you might think that is more manly, or someone that is more soft, whether that's the way they speak, the way they look, the way they come across, whatever that is, you might think that is more feminine. Things like that. And then social categorization is grouping people or things according to certain characteristics such as age, race, and gender. And this is actually a lot along the same lines as stereotyping, which we'll get into later in the chapter. And you'll see why stereotypes occur, and how our brains automatically categorize people into groups. Okay, so one theory as to why we think of others the way we do is the attribution theory. We understand a behavior by attributing it either to an internal disposition or an external situation. So an internal disposition that's the way they are. That's who they are. That's their personality, that's their morals, that's the way that they believe. So if someone does something and you think it's because of their internal disposition, you think they did it because they believe in what they did, or they think it was right, or that goes along with who they are as a person. However, if you think something is according to an external situation, you think that the situation is what caused them to do something. Maybe they got a flat tire on the way to work, and that was the reason they were late, was an external situation. But if you did not know that at first, you maybe thought that they were lazy, which would be an internal disposition, and that's why they showed up late to work. Okay, so that's the difference between an internal disposition and an external situation. So first, attribution is an explanation about the cause of our own or others' behaviors. So according to the attribution theory, we're trying to understand or explain why someone does the things they do, why someone did the thing that they did. Why was someone late to work? We're trying to attribute it to a cause. Is it because they're a lazy person and they just didn't get out of bed, so they have this internal disposition of being lazy? Or was it an external situation where they got a flat tire and it was absolutely everything out of their control, and it was an external situation that caused them to be late? Okay, dispositional attribution is attributing our own or other person's behavior to personality or personal characteristic. And then situational attribution is attributing our own or another person's behavior to external factors such as the situation or environment, just like what I was saying. So there's something that most, if not all of us, fall prey to, and that is the fundamental attribution error. This is the failure to recognize the importance of situational influences on behavior, along with the corresponding tendencies to overemphasize the importance of dispositions on behavior. We tend to think that people do things the way they do because they believe in it, because that is part of who they are, and it is a reflection of who they are and what they believe in. When we actually overemphasize the people's tendency to do things because they believe it's right, or they believe, it's part of who they are. And we fail to recognize that mostly the reason people do things the way they do, or why they do the things they do, is because of the situation they're in, and it influences what they do. So that's something that we don't take into account. And honestly, according to the actor-observer bias, that whenever it comes to situations, we tend to think of ourselves as, say I do something wrong, we tend to chalk it up to situational causes, whereas someone else does something wrong, we chalk it up to dispositional causes. So an attributional bias, the actor-observer bias, is in which a person attributes their own actions to situational causes, whereas an observer, they make a dispositional attribution for the same event. So let's say, for a same example, two of us, I say I'm late to work, and I know that it's because I got a flat tire on the way to work. There's nothing I could do. Situational causes, okay, completely out of my control. But then I see someone else being late. I'm like, they are so lazy. Why can't they just get to work on time? Well, I'm showing grace to myself, and I'm giving myself I'm hoping other people give me the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not giving other people the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying that, or, oh yeah, I told a little white lie in this situation, but it was just because, it would hurt someone's feelings if I would have told them the truth. But when someone else does a little white lie, it's like, oh my gosh, they're a horrible person. How could they have lied to me? Even if they're put in the same exact situation where they thought, I really don't want to hurt Rachel's feelings, so I'm going to say, no, they're going to tell a little white lie to me to try to save my feelings. And I think that's it. I say that I lied because of the situation, because I didn't want to hurt their feelings. But I'm saying the other person lied to me because they're a liar and they're not a good person. That is a difference between situational and dispositional attribution. And then some people fall prey to a self-serving bias, where if you do something good, you praise yourself and you say, it was all me. But if you do something wrong, you cite situational causes. The tendency to attribute failure and other bad events to external circumstances, and to attribute success and other good events to oneself. Whenever I teach this in social psychology, I have a little comic strip that goes along with it. And it's this football player at the end of a football game getting interviewed by, I'm guessing the sportscaster, and says, I would like to thank the Lord for making us lose today. And that is a self-serving bias that, okay, well, we lost. It's something out of my control that I could not have done. No matter how good of a game I played, we were never going to win. But let's say they would have won. He wouldn't have said, I'd like to thank the Lord for helping us or making us win today. He would have said, I did a good job. That was all me. I threw the best passes. I ran the best plays, whatever it was. And that's what a self-serving bias is. So we're making attributions. We're trying to look for explanations as to why other people do what they do, why they do it the way they do it. Okay, the next subsection of social psychology is attitude formation and change. So what makes people form attitudes about people, and then what makes them change their attitudes about people or a situation. So first, we're going to look into the breakdown what attitudes are. So an attitude is an evaluative belief or opinion about people, objects, or ideas. We've got explicit attitudes and implicit implicit attitudes. So explicit attitudes are beliefs or opinions that are held consciously and can be reported to others. And then we have implicit attitudes, which are beliefs and opinions that are unconscious and can be automatically influence people. So if you think explicit language, that's, filthy language that people are speaking out loud, then that's how you can help you remember explicit and implicit attitudes. Explicit attitudes are things that are held consciously, like you are aware of them and they can be said to others. So explicit language can be said to others. Explicit attitudes can be shared with others. Then implicit attitudes are beliefs and opinions that are unconscious and can automatically influence behaviors. And that could be, based off of the way you were raised. Maybe you don't believe what your parents believed or your grandparents believed, but there's a little bit still ingrained in you that can unconsciously change your, affect your decision making. Okay, so once again, attitude is an evaluation of an object in a positive or negative fashion, and it includes 3 components. So I've got two definitions of attitude, but they're the same thing. So it's an evaluative belief or opinion. So this is an evaluation of an object in a positive or negative fashion, and it includes 3 components. So we're going to break down what attitude is. So how do you know what your attitude about something is? First, you've got the affect. This is your emotions, how much you like or dislike something. Okay, then you've got cognition. These are your thoughts that reinforce one's feelings, whether it's knowledge about that thing or memories associated with that thing. And then behaviors. Our evaluations of things tell us whether to approach or avoid. So, for example, my favorite fruit is either apples or strawberries. And so right now it's been strawberries. So affect, the emotion, how I really like strawberries. It reminds me of summertime whenever I eat them and makes me really happy. Cognition, thoughts or feelings that reinforce one's feelings. Knowledge or memories. So whenever I know that every time I eat them, I like them, and memories are biting into a strawberry and just thinking, that just tastes like summertime. It's delicious. And so my behavior based off of my evaluations, my affect and cognition, it tells me whether to approach or avoid strawberries. And so I'm going to approach strawberries and I'm going to eat them. However, I hate peppers. I've tried so hard to like them. I've tried eating them so many times. I just cannot get myself to like them. So affect, emotion, how much you like or dislike something. I don't like peppers. Cognition, thoughts that reinforce one's feelings, knowledge or memories. So memories, every time I've eaten them, every time I'm taking a bite, I spit it out because I just think, ugh, that is disgusting. So based off my evaluation, it tells me whether to approach or avoid. I'm going to avoid peppers whenever I can. So the combination of those 3 things, my affect, my cognition, and my behaviors, those comprise my attitude about whatever it is, whether it's a person, a place, a thing, whatever it is, an idea. Okay, now on to cognitive dissonance theory. So we're going to talk about 2 different theories, cognitive dissonance and self-perception theory. They are kind of conflicting theories. Okay, so cognitive dissonance theory is a theory that inconsistency between a person's thoughts, sentiments, and actions creates an aversive emotional state called dissonance that leads to efforts to restore consistency. What does that mean? Okay, so if any of you guys have ever been in choir or band or anything, what are dissonant notes? Dissonant notes are notes that clash together, whether it's, a B and a C, or an A and a B, or a G and an A. 2 notes that are side by side, they clash. It's like makes an uncomfortable sound in your ear. It creates dissonance. It's the melody or the chord is not resolved. So it kind of like leaves you with like maybe someone not quite hitting the right note along with everyone else. You could hear it and it kind of makes you cringe a little bit. So that's what's happening inside kind of your gut. So the theory that inconsistency between a person's thoughts and actions. So if I'm doing something against what I believe is right, it's going to create an aversive emotional state, or it's going to create dissonance, kind of a clash inside. and it's going to leave me feeling kind of yucky and like I don't know what to do. And so that leads to efforts to restore consistency. So for example, I believe that lying is wrong, but what if I keep lying to people? I've got this, this guilty conscience. I've got this dissonance in me that, okay, I know lying is wrong, but I keep doing it. And so it's just kind of rubbing up against each other. And it's like something's got to give. So either one, I've got to change my behavior and stop lying so that my beliefs and my actions line up, or I've got to convince myself that lying is okay. I've got to justify it to myself. Well, maybe, these little white lies aren't hurting anybody, or maybe it's for their best interest, or whatever it is. I'm not going to get caught, whatever it is. So then if I begin to believe that lying is okay, at least in some circumstances, I'm going to create a less aversive state. I'm going to create less dissonance within myself, and I'm going to come back to a consistency between my thoughts and my actions. So that's what cognitive dissonance theory is. The theory that inconsistency between my thoughts or beliefs or sentiments and my actions create this dissonance within, so much so that something has to break, that something has to change in order to restore consistency. Okay, then we have the self-perception theory. This is where we infer or develop our attitudes about various topics by observing our own behavior. So we don't know what our thoughts or sentiments are about something until we watch our actions. Okay, so that's how it's different from cognitive dissonance. So people infer or develop their attitudes about various topics by observing their own behaviors. So let's say, for example, I meet someone named Sarah, and I hang out with Sarah, and I find myself always wanting to hang out with her a lot. So based off of my actions of being like, I wish I was hanging out with Sarah right now. Well, I'm going to, think about my behaviors of wanting to hang out with her and having a good time with her. Then I'm going to deduce that my attitude towards Sarah is positive and I think she's a good friend. So that's what self-perception theory is. Okay, now on to persuasion. So this is more about attitude change rather than attitude formation. It can be a little bit about attitude formation, but it's more about attitude change. You're trying to change someone's mind to believe what you want them to believe. So persuasion is a deliberate effort to change an attitude, belief, or feeling about a particular issue or topic. And according to the elaboration likelihood model, this suggests that the most effective persuasive technique depends on the motivation of the listener. So we've got two main routes that we can go through in order to try to persuade someone using this elaboration likelihood model. That we have the central route and the peripheral route. So the central route is you're going to use this persuasive technique that focuses on a strong, well-presented argument and with key points that are personally relevant and appeal to reason. So you're going to form a strong argument full of logic. You're going to present information, credible information. You're going to be certain about the way you speak. You're going to be a credible source. You're going to be maybe an expert in that field. You are going to be speaking to someone that knows a lot about the topic. So it's going to take a lot more information to change their mind about something. If you're going to tell, just some random person on the street, maybe your classmate about some kind of new medical device, it's maybe not going to take that much to get them to agree with you because they don't know much about it. But if you're going to try to convince a surgeon to use the new medical device, well, they already have a large amount of understanding of the human body, devices that work with certain surgeries, all these things. So it's going to take a much stronger and much more logical information-based argument to convince them to change their minds. Then we have the peripheral route of persuasion. This is the persuasive technique that involves evaluating an argument based on tangential cues rather than on the argument's merits. So that could be the attractiveness of the person giving the persuasive message. Maybe it's a beautiful woman or a very handsome man. Maybe that person speaks with a lot of certainty, so it sounds good. Maybe it's a short and concise message, so there's not, your brain's not, searching all through all this information, and it's just like, okay, yep, that sounds good to me. So the central route, you're going to be focusing on a good, strong argument, logic. Peripheral, it's going to be more on intangible things, on more superficial things that you're going to be able to use to change someone's mind. And that depends on the listener themselves. Are they looking to have their minds changed? Are they looking to have a strong argument? Are they looking to put much thought, much effort, much thought, much time, much energy into this? I don't know. And so that's what depends on which route you take according to the elaboration likelihood model. Okay, the next subsection of social psychology is social influence. And there's three main types of social influence we are going to talk about in this chapter. That is compliance, obedience, and conformity. The first, compliance, is a change in a person's behavior that occurs in response to a direct request. That could be your mom saying, hey, you might want to put a coat on. Can you please put a coat on? And so that is, you don't have to. That is a request. That is not saying, my mom is saying, you have to put a coat on or else. That is a change in a person's behavior that occurs in response to a direct request. Okay, mom, I'll comply with what you say. No big deal. And there's three methods of which you can undergo compliance. There's three types that we're going to talk about. The first is the foot in the door technique. So this is where you start off with a small request to make a larger request, the one you actually want. And this could happen a lot with donors. I used to work at Northwestern's Foundation and Alumni Association, and that is the private organization, the nonprofit organization that works for the university to fundraise for the university for projects, for scholarships, things like that. And so we worked a lot with donors. And you're not going to go up to, someone who's never given to Northwestern before and ask for $10,000. Unless they're a multi-billionaire, then $10,000 is a drop in the bucket. But, someone that probably has the capacity to give $10,000, you're not going to say, hey, we've got a scholarship we would like to establish. Can you give $10,000? No, you're probably going to start off with, hey, for Giving Tuesday, would you mind giving $250? You're going to get your foot in the door. And this helps because that person's already said yes to you. So the next time something comes around, you can do a little bit bigger of an ask. And then because people like to stay in consistency, once they've said yes to you, they're more than likely to say yes to you again. So then eventually you can say, okay, so how about $10,000 for this project or for this scholarship or whatever it is? You got your foot in the door with the small ask so that you can then later have a big ask, a big request, whatever that is. Okay, next is reciprocal concessions technique. So if you ever think about or heard about during a presidential election or any kind of election, and someone gives a concession speech, what is that? That means they concede to the other person, that they let the other person win. Okay. So if you're both, so reciprocal means both people. So if you both concede to each other, meaning you're both not fully getting what you want, but you're still getting something, that is what reciprocal concession technique is. So you're going to start off with a big ask, and then you're going to follow it by a little ask, because it's going to seem a lot more realistic than the first ask. So let's say, you're in middle school and you say, hey, mom, do you want to be the chaperone for, or, the sponsor, chaperone for our class's, overnight trip to Charleston? I don't know what parent wants to spend, 3 days with 25 eighth graders. Not me. I went on an 8th grade trip to Charleston when I lived in South Carolina in middle school. I don't know what parent would want to do that. And so I know my mom would have said, heck no. But then I say, okay, well then could you at least be the chaperone for our school dance this Friday night? It's just 6 to 9 p.m. Okay, well, giving up 3 hours of your time to watch a bunch of middle schoolers at a dance seems like a much more reasonable ask than a 3-day long overnight trip with a bunch of middle schoolers, wouldn't you say? So my mom would be much more likely to say yes to that. But had I started off with, hey, mom, will you be a chaperone for our middle school dance from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Friday night? I'd be like, oh, no, I really don't want to. But it's going to seem like a much better option. She doesn't want to tell me no twice, probably. She doesn't want to turn me down twice. So we're both going to concede to each other, saying, okay, I get that this is a big ask. How about this smaller ask? And so we both say, okay, we both lost a little bit. We both won a little bit. So that is reciprocal concession. So foot in the door and reciprocal concessions are kind of opposite. Foot in the door, you start off small to ask big, and then reciprocal concessions is you ask big to get something smaller, okay? And then the norm of reciprocity, that is, I do something for you thinking that you're going to do something for me later, or someone does something for me thinking that I'm going to owe them a favor later. So we are going to reciprocate favors. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, is a way to look at it. So those are the 3 types of compliance that we are looking at. Next is obedience. This is complying with direct commands that come from a person perceived to be in a position of authority. This could be a teacher. This could be a parent. This could be a police officer. This could be your boss, whoever it is. It's not a request. It is a direct command saying, you must do this. I need you to do this. Not, would you mind doing this? Which some people, the way that they give commands is like that. But whenever I tell my employees, rather than, hey, would you mind doing that? It's, I need you to stop doing that, or I need you to do this because this is how we stay compliant with our health and safety codes. This is something you must do. This is not a request. This is a command. You must do this. I don't want to hear anything about it. You have to do this. Okay. So that is obedience. That is how I get my employees to do what I need them to do. Okay, then the last type of social influence is conformity. This is adjusting one's behavior or thinking to align or conform to a group standard. So we think about, conforming to social norms. We think of, wearing the latest trends, or doing our makeup a certain way, or, saying certain words, or, whatever it is. We tend to conform to the groups around us. So there's 2 types of conformity, 2 main types of conformity that can then break down a little bit. But we've got normative social influence. This results from people's desire for others' approval and longing to be part of a group. So we're doing things, maybe you see the popular girls and you want to be like them, or maybe you see people that you admire and you want to be more like them. That is normative social influence. You see the latest trends, and so you buy the new low-rise jeans that are coming back in style, although I don't understand it, whatever it is, that is normative social influence. Then there's informational social influence. This results from the perceived knowledge of others brought to the group situation. So that would be, maybe you are in in-person class, not in this online class, but in-person class. And whenever I would teach in person, we would do reviews in class. And let's say I've got a multiple choice question up on the board. I've got A, B, C, or D. And 24 out of 25 of my students say it's C, but one person says it's D. Even though they believe they're right, they're probably going to change their answer to C because of this informational social influence. They don't want to be different from other people, and they believe that, well, shoot, if everyone else thinks that, then that must be right. But let's say, 10 out of 25 said C, and a few said B, and a few said A. Well, that's going to make it a lot easier for them to be confident in their answer, which was D, and actually was D. So you just tend to think that if the group is saying something, then they can't all be wrong. They must be right. I must be wrong. So I'm going to look to others as to what I should do or say. And the level to which people are susceptible to that is suggestibility, a person's level of susceptibility to the opinions and influence of others. Some people are very independent and very sure of themselves, so they have low suggestibility. Other people, they just crave belongingness. It doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. They want to fit in with people, and so they have a high level of suggestibility. Okay, next is the effect of other people's presence on your performance. Okay, so social facilitation is the tendency to perform easy or well-learned tasks better when observed by others, and perform difficult or novel, which is new, tasks worse when observed by others. So the book's definition just stops with the tendency to perform easy or well-learned tasks better when observed by others. But I added, so I added that you can actually perform worse if you're performing a difficult task or a new task in front of other people. It doesn't really matter who it is. It's just the fact that you are in front of someone else. So let's say you are a piano player and you've practiced this song, you've been playing piano for 10 plus years, you know, you're really good and you've memorized this piece, you've played this piece hundreds of times. And so actually the presence of other people, maybe it's a crowd, maybe it's, you know, a parent watching, maybe it's someone you're trying to impress, it actually, you know, increases, it hones in your abilities, your muscle memory takes over, you become more acutely aware of what you're doing. So that actually added pressure makes you perform even better than you would have, say, in a practice. However, if there's something that, you know, maybe you've been playing piano for 6 months, you've practiced, you know, a song a few times, but you still have the sheet music in front of you. It's still pretty new, and then you perform it in front of someone else. Maybe you nailed it in practice, but you're probably going to mess up pretty badly in a performance, because that added stress, that added acute awareness actually makes it more likely for you to mess up. So that is what social facilitation is that the presence of other people during your performances of whatever task it is, will make your performance either better or worse, depending on what that task is and how comfortable you are with that task. So that's how people being around can change your performance. And then social loafing is another way that people being around you can change your performance. Social loafing is a tendency for people to put less effort into a task when they are part of a group, because they feel like they can kind of blend in, that they can kind of go below the surface and it won't really matter because there's 6 other people in the group. Or, you know, I always hated group projects because I felt like that was some people's opportunity to kind of go below the radar and not do anything. But I never wanted to get a bad grade, so I just did the work anyway. So, you know, it paid off for them, and I ended up with doing more work because I never felt like I could count on many other people. But you know, someone that if it was on their own, they would have done it. But now that the responsibility is divvied among other people, they dip out and say, you know what? Oh, this isn't for me. And so that's what a diffusion of responsibility is, which we'll get into that later in the chapter. Okay, so being part of a group can definitely change the way that people come to decisions, because if you're in a group of, say, 20 other people, 20 people with different ideas, and you're trying to make a decision for the group together, well, you're no longer as concerned with your own personal ideals, but what is best for the group. So you're more than likely to make different decisions for the group than you would for yourself as an individual. And so this can cause a lot of different things to happen. The first is called a risky shift. This is decisions made in groups become riskier than they would be if made by individuals alone. There's something about encouragement of other people, and especially when everyone is like-minded, it becomes more and more intense. And so that's what group polarization is. The tendency for like-minded groups to become more extreme in their opinions and positions as a result of being part of the group. You kind of get put into an echo chamber. Like, you're hearing your ideas, your ideals, your opinions echoed back to you by other people, which makes you even more entrenched in your ideas. And so that's why it's important to, I'm not saying don't be friends with like-minded people. I think that that is important, but also, you know, have connections with people that aren't so like-minded. It keeps you more grounded in what is reality, because a lot of what is true, it lies somewhere in the middle. It's not so far one way or the other, but it's usually somewhere in the middle. And when you get into these groups, you become more and more polarized by just hearing your same beliefs echoed over and over, that you're not willing to then listen to another idea. And then groupthink can occur. This is when group members' opinions become so uniform that any dissent becomes impossible. That you are part of a group, and let's say people are taking a vote or voicing their opinions, you are too afraid to rock the boat you're too afraid to say anything because you don't want to rock the boat, and therefore a decision gets made because you're afraid that any dissent is going to be met with controversy, with backlash, with whatever it is. And there's a few ways that this can happen. One, if a group leader makes their voice known before everyone else has voiced their opinions, well, then oftentimes people feel afraid to actually voice their opinions, because they're afraid of the backlash they may get. Or it seems like a consensus is brewing, and even though you don't agree with it, you become afraid to rock the boat, and so you don't really voice your opinion. So that is how groupthink can occur, and it's something that we need to combat from happening, because that's how that's against innovation. It's against having everyone's voice heard, and to have new ideas being brought to the table. We bring groups together to come up with new ideas, to form different perspectives. But if people are too afraid to bring those perspectives to the table, then what is the point? Okay, next is how kind of mob mentality occurs. So there's something called deindividuation. What does that mean? Deindividuation is a loss of your individual identity and personal responsibility that can occur when an individual is part of a group experience. So let's say the Astro World stampede that occurred. Okay, people are trampling over fences, and they're trampling over people, and people were killed, people got hurt. I'm sure whenever people showed up there at the gate, they were not planning on being a part of a stampede. They weren't planning on hurting anybody. I don't think that was anyone's intention when they showed up. But something happens when you become part of a group. You start to lose sense of yourself. You start to lose sense of identity, and that you feed off of the energy of everyone else around you. It's almost like a buzz, like a high. And the diffusion of responsibility that occurs, because okay, there's thousands of people here. If something goes wrong, it's not going to be one person to blame. It's going to be all of us. And who are they going to catch? I feel like I'm pretty incognito right now. So it doesn't really matter what I do. So you lose this individual identity and this personal responsibility, and you gain this energy that occurs when you're in a group experience. So that is de-individuation. On the opposite side is individuation. This is an enhanced sense of individual identity produced by focusing attention on the self, which generally leads people to act carefully and deliberately and in accordance with their sense of propriety and values. So there's something that is a type of individuation called the spotlight effect. And this is where you think that other people are watching what you do and honestly care what you do. Like, say you fall down a flight of steps, or you slip and fall, whatever, and you become so aware of yourself and what you do. And so, you get up slowly and you try to act normal, and you just become hyper aware, but you think that other people are watching and that other people really give a hoot. I'm not saying people don't care whether you're hurt or not, but they're not going to be talking about that for months on end, where you're going to be, every night before you go to sleep, you're going to be thinking about that time you slipped in front of a bunch of people and how humiliated you were, when really people don't care. So that is the difference between de-individuation and individuation. Okay, now on to the subsection of social psychology that is social relationships. So this is, kind of what we think of people. So first we've got prejudice. This is an attitude or affective response towards a group and its individual members. So remember, prejudice is an attitude. It's something on the inside. It's not something that you're showing. It's not something that you can see. It's just something that you feel. Okay, then there's discrimination. This is kind of the outward action of prejudice sometimes. Discrimination is favorable or unfavorable treatment of individuals based on their membership in a particular group. Prejudice, pretty much always not a good thing. And I know people think discrimination is always a bad thing, but it's not. There are ways to be discriminatory that are moral and okay. You think of college admissions, okay? Those are discriminatory because they let some people let some people gain admission to their university and they don't let other people. That is discriminatory. Favorable treatment of individuals based on their membership of a particular group. Maybe it's their grade point average, their ACT or SAT score, whatever it is. That is a form of discrimination. Hiring some people or not hiring the other people, that is discrimination. But discrimination can also be unfavorable treatment of individuals based off of their membership of a particular group. That could be based off of race. It could be based off of ethnicity. It could be based off of gender. It could be based off of sexuality. It could be based off of religion. Whatever it is, there are definitely types of discrimination that are wrong, and they usually stem from a place of prejudice. Okay, stereotypes are beliefs that certain attributes are characteristic of members of particular groups. Sometimes prejudices stem from stereotypes, and then discrimination comes out of those attitudes towards people within certain groups. So why are stereotypes a thing? And I said earlier that I was going to talk a little bit about this. And sometimes, a lot of the times, it comes from a place of social categorization. So I know when I was teaching in person, first day of class, I'd be so nervous. Okay. I'm about to go talk up in front of, 25 to 35 new students that I don't know. They don't know me. They don't know how the semester's going to go. And I would look out there and, I had roll, but there's no way I was going to remember everyone's names. And so I kind of categorized people. My brain automatically did. It's like, okay, I see the baseball guys sitting together. I see these people sitting together. I see these people sitting together. I can kind of tell within the first day or two what kind of student they're going to be. And people definitely do change my mind for better or for worse throughout the semester. But it's a way to reduce brain energy, that if you can categorize people into broader groups, then it doesn't take as much brain storage and energy whenever you're in a time of not being able to process information. It helps you process it in easier chunks. And so stereotypes can occur because of that. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but as long as you don't let that affect the way you feel about people, and you are kind and respectful, then that is okay. But stereotypes can also come from a hurtful and hateful place. So it's important to be cognizant of that. Next, a stereotype threat. So this is the fear of confirming the stereotypes that others have about one's group. Some people say, I do my best to be the best student I can be because there's a stereotype that, athletes aren't always the best students, that they care more about their sports. And I really want to do my best, but it's that extra added pressure that, you feel like you need to go above and beyond or do the best you can or do the worst you can, because you don't want to confirm a stereotype about a group that you are a part of. Okay. In the line of prejudice and discrimination, we have in-group and out-group, and then scapegoat theory. So in-group is a tendency for people to favor their own group positions and members. It's very easy to do that, you relate to those people more. You feel like you have community with them. So you feel like the group that you are part of, that you're right, that you should, yeah, of course I would favor these people. But then outgroup is a tendency for people to dislike people who are viewed as outside of their own group. So that is definitely, both are definitely bases for prejudice and discrimination. And then lastly, the scapegoat theory, a concept suggesting that prejudice results from the need to find someone to blame for negative circumstances. Definitely, 100%. So according to the realistic group conflict theory, this is a theory that group conflict, prejudice, and discrimination are likely to arise over competition between groups for limited resources. This heightens in times of economic difficulty, such as recessions and high unemployment. Yes, when resources seem to be depleted, it's going to be even higher tensions between groups that tend to be prejudiced or discriminatory towards one another. Prejudice and discrimination should be strongest among groups that stand to lose most from another group's economic advance. Okay, so that was all on prejudice, stereotypes, discrimination. Now we're getting into relationships, especially attraction. So proximity and similarity are two aspects as to how someone can gain attraction to someone else, how romantic relationships especially can occur. The first is proximity. This is you are around that person a lot, whether it's school, whether it's work, whether it's, mutual friends, whatever it is. According to the mere exposure effect, this is the idea that repeated exposure to a stimulus, such as an object or person, leads to greater liking of the stimulus. So I remember when the new Taylor Swift album came out, there's a couple songs that I was like, I just don't really know about these ones. Well, fast forward, that came out, I think, in October. Fast forward a few months, and now some of those songs are my favorite songs. It just took repeated exposure to it. And it felt more comfortable, more familiar afterwards. And now those are the songs that I end up singing along to the most. And while there's still one song that I'm like, you know what, I just don't like it. And you know what, I'm probably never going to like that song. And that's fine. But proximity or repeated exposure to something, when we feel more familiar with something, we feel more comfortable with it, and we tend to like it more. And so that can happen with people too. There's some people, when I met my husband, oh boy, we met at work. I didn't like him. I thought he was weird. I thought he was annoying. I had never met anyone like that before, and he just rubbed me the wrong way. We actually strongly disliked each other for the first 6 months we knew each other. But the more and more we worked together, and the more we started to see who each other really were, the more familiar he became, the more comfortable I became with him, the more I was like, hey, I like him. I think he's kind of cute. I think he's really nice. I think he's a great guy. And that is definitely a way that the mere exposure effect took effect on my life. Another is similarity. The more two people have in common, the more likely they are to experience increased attraction to that person. Yes. Okay, now this is getting into the types of love, a few types of love that we're going to talk about. The first is passionate love. This is intense longing and desire for another person that has physiological, cognitive, emotional, and behavioral components. So physiological, maybe you sweat a little bit when you're with them, your face blushes, whatever, your pupils dilate when you see someone that you really enjoy. And then companionate love are feelings of affection and intimacy for another person. That could be a friendship type of love, but also a romantic type of love where you want to be with them, you want to have physical and emotional and mental and spiritual, whatever, all types of intimacy with that person. And then consummate love is a type of love that includes aspects of all other components of love. It adds it all together. So according to the triangular theory of love, this is interpersonal relationships are comprised of three components: intimacy, passion, and commitment. And depending on the type of relationship it is, so consummate love takes up all three. That is a fully balanced romantic love. So commitment and intimacy Well, that can be a close friendship. So you're committed to that person, you see yourself, wanting to be friends with them forever. You talk about everything with them. You really are trusting with them. You're very open with them. So you have commitment and intimacy. Okay. Then you have passion and intimacy, and that's like an affair, or like maybe some kind of not non-committed um sexual relationship. Maybe it's dating, but it's on the rocks, or someone you're having an affair with, or whatever it is. You have this passion, you have this intimacy, you feel like you can talk to this person, but you don't really know if they're going to stay. Okay. And then passion and commitment, um that is maybe not the happiest of marriages, where maybe you don't really talk very much anymore. You don't, but you like their body maybe, and you're committed to them, but you kind of lacking a key part of a relationship. Okay, now we're going to get into um altruism and doing things for other people. So, prosocial behavior, behavior carried out with the goal of helping others. And a type of prosocial behavior is altruism. And I know I just talked about Taylor Swift, but if any of you guys have heard her song Antihero, that was really big at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023. Her second verse says, did you hear my covert narcissism? I disguise as altruism. And I think that led a lot of people to say, what does altruism mean? I don't know what that means. I've never heard of that word before. It is behavior carried out with the goal of helping others without concern for one's own safety or self-interest. So I'm going to do something for you, even though this could potentially hurt me financially, time-wise, physically, whatever it is. It's like running into a burning building to save someone. You are putting your own safety at risk, but your goal is to help someone else. So that song, did you hear my covert narcissism? I disguise as altruism. That it looks like I'm trying to do something good for you, but really I'm doing something good for me, is what she's saying. And so reciprocal altruism is helping others with the expectation that they will probably return the favor in the future. And that's just one type of altruism. There's a few other types of altruism, but this is the main one that I'm hitting on in this chapter. If you take my social psychology class, you'll learn about other types of altruism. Okay, and then this is our last slide, the bystander effect. This happens when you are around other people, you are less likely to help someone in need. The greater the number of bystanders present, the less likely any individual bystander is to help the person in need. Because let's say someone hurt themselves in a parking lot, and you see that there's 20 other people in the parking lot that all see this happen. Someone falls and they twist their ankle and they're crying, and you're like, well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not whatever, so I don't feel any responsibility to this person. Surely there's someone else in this crowd, and these 20 people that just witnessed this as well, that is more qualified or more capable of helping this person, so I'm just going to keep going on with what I'm doing. However, if you saw a person fall and twist their ankle and they're crying in the parking lot, and you were the only person to see it, you're the only person there, it's an empty parking lot besides the two of you, well, then you're like, well, shoot, I'm the only person that can help, so I am the best option. So you go and help someone. And what happens is a diffusion of responsibility. The more people there are, which I just talked about that in when we talked about de-individuation, you have this diffusion of responsibility across 20 people, where you're only feeling a small bit of the responsibility versus you're the only person there. Okay, you feel 100% of the responsibility to help that person. So the more people there are, the less you feel responsible for that person that's in need. And then the less people there are, the more responsibility you feel for the person in need. Like there's 3 other people in the parking lot, you're like, oh, okay, I don't know, I look like I may be the best person for the job, or these people maybe don't seem, whatever. And so, oh, okay, these people aren't going to go help her, okay, I guess I'll go help her. But if there's 20 or 30 or whatever more people, you're like, oh yeah, that one is not my problem. I don't feel responsible for this because surely there's someone else that can help better. So, okay, that is the end of chapter 13, social psychology. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I really like the topic, the field of psychology that is social psychology. And I will see you next week for the next chapter. Bye.